Pentagon moves to reduce Sen. Mark Kelly's military retirement after controversial video sparks clash over civil-military boundaries. A rare confrontation between a sitting U.S. Senator and the Department of Defense escalated sharply this week after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced disciplinary action against Sen. Mark Kelly of Arizona, a Democrat and retired U.S. Navy captain. The Pentagon's decision centers on a political video Kelly appeared in alongside other Democratic lawmakers, in which service members were reminded that they are legally permitted to refuse unlawful orders. According to Hegseth, the video crossed a line from political speech into what he described as conduct harmful to military discipline. As a result, the Pentagon has initiated proceedings to reduce Kelly's retired rank, a move that would directly lower his military retirement pay, and has issued a formal letter of censure against him. The dispute touches on deeply sensitive issues within American democracy: civilian control of the military, the rights of retired officers, the scope of political speech, and the consequences of challenging military operations deemed lawful by the executive branch. The case is notable not only for its subject, but also for its implications, as disciplinary actions against retired officers who now serve in Congress are exceptionally rare. Mark Kelly is not a typical lawmaker. Before entering politics, he spent more than 2 decades in uniform as a naval aviator. He flew dozens of combat missions, commanded squadrons, and later became a NASA astronaut, piloting and commanding multiple space shuttle missions. His public biography has long emphasized service, sacrifice, and a close connection to the armed forces. Kelly retired from the Navy at the rank of captain, and under military law remains subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, because he receives retirement pay. This legal distinction, often overlooked outside military circles, lies at the center of the Pentagon's justification for discipline. Unlike veterans who separate completely from service, retirees receiving pay can, under specific circumstances, face administrative or legal action for conduct deemed inconsistent with military law. That rarely happens, and almost never in such a public or politically charged setting. The dispute stems from a short political video posted on X in mid-November, featuring Kelly and 5 other Democratic members of Congress. In the recording, each lawmaker addressed service members directly, emphasizing that U.S. military law requires personnel to refuse unlawful orders. Kelly's portion of the video included a statement widely circulated since its release, that American law is clear and that military members are not obligated to carry out illegal directives. The video was released amid public debate over recent U.S. military strikes in international waters, targeting vessels allegedly connected to drug trafficking. The strikes reportedly resulted in significant casualties, and critics questioned whether Congress had authorized the operations under the Constitution's war powers framework. Supporters of the video argued that reminding service members of their legal obligations aligns with military ethics and historical precedent. Critics countered that such messaging, when delivered by elected officials outside the chain of command, risks undermining discipline and trust within the armed forces. In November, the Department of Defense announced it was reviewing Kelly's involvement in the video. At the time, Pentagon officials said potential outcomes ranged from administrative reprimands to more serious measures, including the theoretical possibility of recalling Kelly to active duty. On Monday, Hegseth clarified the department's direction. Rather than pursuing recall or court-martial proceedings, the Pentagon has chosen a disciplinary path aimed at reducing Kelly's retired rank. That action, if finalized, would result in a lower pension. In a public statement, Hegseth characterized Kelly's remarks as reckless and damaging, asserting that they encourage service members to disobey lawful orders by labeling legitimate military operations as illegal. Hegseth argued that as a retired officer receiving pay, Kelly remains accountable under military law. He stated that the Department of Defense, acting on behalf of the American people, has an obligation to preserve good order and discipline. Kelly has been given 30 days to formally respond before any reduction in rank becomes final. The Pentagon's decision relies heavily on Articles 133 and 134 of the UCMJ, which address conduct unbecoming an officer and actions that bring discredit upon the armed forces. Article 133 is intentionally broad, designed to preserve standards of behavior expected of commissioned officers. Article 134 covers conduct that negatively affects the military's reputation or functioning, even if not explicitly listed elsewhere in the code. Part 5. The legal framework behind the decision. Legal scholars note that applying these provisions to political speech by retired officers, especially those serving as elected officials, occupies a gray area. While courts have historically upheld the military's authority over retirees, enforcement has been inconsistent and often cautious to avoid constitutional conflicts. Critics of the Pentagon's action argue that Kelly's statements restated established military law, which requires refusal of unlawful orders. Supporters of the discipline argue that context matters, and that presenting lawful operations as illegal in a politically charged environment can sow confusion among troops. 5 other Democrats appeared in the same video: Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan and Representatives Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, Chris DeLuzio, and Chrissy Holohan. Each has a background in national security or military service. Slotkin previously worked as a CIA analyst. Crow, Goodlander, and DeLuzio served as Navy officers, while Holohan served in the Air Force.
However, unlike Kelly, these lawmakers separated from military service rather than retiring. As a result, they are not subject to the UCMJ and face no military disciplinary consequences for their statements. This distinction has fueled criticism that Kelly is being singled out not for the content of his remarks alone, but because of his unique legal status as a retiree. Kelly responded forcefully, both personally and politically. In a public statement, he pledged to contest the Pentagon's action, quote, with everything he has, unquote. He described his service record in detail, citing combat missions, time away from family, and leadership roles during some of the most challenging moments of his personal life, including commanding a space shuttle mission while his wife, former Representative Gabby Giffords, recovered from a gunshot wound. Kelly framed the dispute as a defense of constitutional principles, arguing that speaking about the legality of military orders is consistent with the oath he took to support and defend the Constitution. He accused Hegseth of attempting to intimidate retired service members and warned that the precedent could chill speech among veterans who hold dissenting views. The Pentagon's decision immediately drew condemnation from Democratic leaders. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer publicly defended Kelly, calling him a patriot and accusing the Defense Department of engaging in political retaliation. Schumer argued that punishing a senator for expressing a legal principle sends a dangerous message about the boundaries of dissent in a democracy.
Republicans, by contrast, have largely supported Hegseth's position or remained silent, emphasizing the importance of maintaining military discipline and unity, particularly during ongoing global tensions. The divide reflects broader partisan disagreements over executive authority, military oversight, and the role of Congress in authorizing force. At the heart of the controversy lies a fundamental tension. Civilian control of the military requires clear authority and discipline, but democratic governance depends on open debate, including debate about the legality of military action. Historically, U.S. service members have been taught that refusing unlawful orders is not only permitted but required. However, the determination of what constitutes an unlawful order is complex and context-specific. By entering that debate publicly, critics say Kelly blurred the line between legal education and political advocacy. Supporters argue that silence would be a greater danger. Kelly now faces a formal administrative process that could result in a permanent reduction of rank and retirement pay. His response may include legal arguments, constitutional claims, and challenges to the Pentagon's interpretation of military law. Regardless of the outcome, the case is likely to shape future guidance for retired officers serving in public office. It may also influence how the military navigates political speech in an era of heightened polarization. For now, the dispute stands as one of the most visible clashes in recent memory between an elected official with a military past and the institution he once served.